You're listening to the AI Moment, the podcast where we try and make sense of AI for business leaders in bite-sized pieces. I'm your host, Jonathan Wagstaff, and my co-host is Danny Denhard. Hello, Danny.
Hi, Jonathan. Today, we're going to dive into one of the recent reports, and it's the IoD Governance in the Boardroom Report. It sounds heavy, but we're going to try and break it down, as you said, in bite-sized chunks. So, Jonathan, do you want to dive into why we're talking about it and what's so critical about it?
This has come out from the IoD in September 2025. It's when we're recording this podcast. And it's the first statement from the UK Institute of Directors around how they view AI governance in the boardroom. In other words, their first guidelines around how organizations, particularly enterprise organizations, but all organizations, in fact, should look at AI and the sorts of things they should worry about. And so it's, as you say, Dan, it's a heavy read. There's 35 pages of it. And there's a lot of stuff in there, but let's try and break down over the next few minutes the sort of 3 or 4 major points that stuck out to us as we looked at it. The first one that comes through quite loud and clear is we have this interesting challenge in the UK in that we don't have a single AI Act yet, like the EU AI Act. So the EU produced this act, which I think came into force late last year, and it is a single risk-based law which has explicit duties for organizations using AI. Whereas in the UK at the moment, we tend to be governed by the bodies that were governing things anyway. So the Information Commissioner's Office, the Financial Conduct Agency, Competition and Markets Authority, Ofcom, medical regulators. There's all these regulatory bodies. And really they're where the regulation comes from as it stands. So what that means is if you're a UK firm and your data or your users extend into the EU, you've got to think about both sets of regulation. You've got to think about both the EU AI Act and the UK regulators. And what that then means is you've got to really do a mapping exercise and say, where might the AI models we're using touch the EU? Where might the data cross into or out from the EU? What use cases are working on there? And so can we align what we're doing to make sure that we're not falling foul of either UK regulation or the EU AI Act? So there's a kind of dual compliance challenge for businesses there, Dan. I don't know about you. I'm not seeing a huge amount of that at the moment. I may not be looking in the right places, but I don't know what you're seeing there with businesses.
For me, a lot of the time is, especially with AI and how we're now storing data, depending on where we store it and how we store it, depends on how we connect it together. And I believe that a lot of companies haven't considered it yet because we use a CRM system that might be based in Ireland, which is then technically the EU. We might use a slightly different pop-up notification or cookie notification for the website. We might use another tool that does outreach via another IP address. And a lot of these tools will have AI baked in. So I think it's essential that we understand and there is some oversight and governance in this because it's a never-ending subject and title for people to get their head around. I think data quality and way its mapping is going to be critical, especially for SME, SMBs, because it is such a hot topic. But I like the way that it's come out and said around the strategic need for it, and I like the way that it's around structure and basically telling people how to be successful somewhat in that. Yeah. So I think it's really important, and although it's a governance, it's a guideline, I think for most people it's going to be something that they need to share with their partners and potentially with some of their third party, whether it's agencies or what have you, to really take this seriously. So do you think I'm on the right track there?
Yeah, and I think you hit the nail on the head with, we're now, most of us are using cloud-based or online systems. So we have a CRM, we may have a manufacturing system, we have a finance system. They may all be, subscription-based, and those data centers might be in the EU, might not be in the EU, might be in Ireland, might be in Germany, might be in the US. So we need to understand where those things are and make sure we're aligned accordingly. Second point is, and something you and I have talked about before, Dan, but one of the things the report notes is that adoption is outrunning governance. In other words, all sorts of people are experimenting. board directors of enterprise organizations are experimenting. Pilots are everywhere. However, policies and skills and controls are lagging the pace of experimentation at the moment. And I think one of the things the report really talks about is, you've got to understand the risk. You've kind of got to inventory what you've got going on. So who's using which tools? I know this has been a pet subject of yours for a while. Is like, who's using what out there? Who's got Gemini going on? Who's got OpenAI, ChatGPT going on? Who's using the AI elements of things like Salesforce? What's going on? But actually, the report sort of positions that as, and again, something we've talked about, is like, if you're clever with your governance and your policy, it should be an enabler of scaling. It shouldn't be a constrainer or a brake on AI adoption. It actually, done well, should enable the scaling of AI adoption, but you need to have controls on that. Any thoughts on that?
Honestly, couldn't agree more. People are adopting it individually and teams are adopting it slightly different. And check out their Shadow AI episodes that we launched to go deeper into it. But I think if you do take a look at this and understand what people are using, the manifesto episode is also another great supporting pod for this. I would definitely recommend checking those pods out for sure on those 2 points.
And then the third point that pops out is, again, something we've talked about a lot, which is data quality is absolutely fundamental to the success of anything. But they talk about three things. They talk about the lineage of the data, they talk about the quality of the data, and they talk about the permissions of the data. So what do we mean by that? The lineage is, where did you get your data from? The quality is obviously, what kind of condition is it in? Is it consistent? Are all the fields filled in, etc.? And then the permissions is, who can see the data, who can use the data, who can access the data. And it's kind of common sense. All three of those make a lot of sense to be on top of. But they're suggesting that if we can't, rather than even trying experiments with incomplete data, we should really be saying, if you can't show me the provenance of the data, then we shouldn't do the experiment at all. So it's a kind of number one thing for them to say, that the data provenance is a key trust issue here. And so really getting all over that stuff. You and I have talked about this before. I think it is, they're absolutely right. It's core to any kind of AI project or adoption that people are looking to do. And clearly, from an enterprise governance point of view, it's very, very important.
And the fourth point in the governance piece, what's that, Jonathan? So
the fourth thing that leapt out at me, and we're going to love this, aren't we? There is a new ISO standard. ISO 42001 is the new AI management system standard, which ties together AI policy, AI risk, AI controls, etc. And it's very much talks to and is linked to ISO 27001, which many of you will know is the security standard, data security, IT security standard. And it also very much links to ISO 9001, which even more people will know is the quality standard. So we've now got this 42001 ISO standard for AI. It's things like system registers, it's things like risk assessments, it's things like, can you evidence the way you've tested? What kind of KPIs have you got? What's the cadence of your review process of your AI standards? How often do you look at them? But one of the things that it talks to in that is, again, something that we've talked about a lot, Dan, which is AI is not a tech project. It's not something that IT should run with. It's a shared language between the tech guys, the risk management people, the quality management people, and the board. From a governance point of view, the board's got to be all over it, because it is an enterprise-wide initiative, not an IT initiative. So for me, I think we may even end up doing a pod on ISO 42001 in a bit more detail. I've not read it, I have to admit. I doubt you've read it either. We'll probably have a dig into it at some point and see if we can find some things in there that are nuggets we can help people to understand and work. How excited are you, Dan, at the thought of another ISO standard? I imagine that's made your day, that piece of news.
I have to admit, we're recording on a Friday afternoon, and it made me consider reaching for a drink. So, yeah, I think that's just something that we're going to have to dive into a little bit deeper, Jonathan.
Yeah, we'll pick that up. We'll look into that a bit more, and we'll pick that up on a future pod, maybe. So there, it's a 34-page read, 35 pages, whatever it is. And it's there for people to go and download for free on the IoD's website. But really, those four headlines that we've talked about are the main things that stand out. And I think it's going to be interesting to see how it evolves from here.
What we'll do is we'll add the link into the show notes for everyone. With the supporting newsletter, we'll also add a link. I might also give it a go to try and do an executive briefing from one of the AI tools, probably Notebook LM. So that will help people take a deeper dive without having to find some time for the 34 pages.
Sounds good to me. Using the AI, Dan, I'm liking that idea, using the AI to find out more about AI. How about that?
Exactly. Thanks for diving deeper in that, Jonathan. I think we've given people a lot to consider and how to go back and listen to maybe a couple of our episodes. Thanks for listening today, everyone. If you check out our show notes, it has all the links and contact details for us. Please do check out our supporting newsletter at aimoments.co.uk. Remember to hit follow and subscribe in your podcast players. And Jonathan and I will see you next time.